Okay, hey, Impactors, and welcome back. What if everything you built, your stability, your sense of self, even your family, was suddenly taken from you? For some, that's the end. For others, it's the beginning of something unstoppable. Skills can't be taken, resourcefulness cannot be erased, and neither can resilience. That's a muscle built through fire. Today,
Mm.
we're diving into the mindset of rewriting the rules, freelancing your way to freedom, and turning survival into strategy.
Mm.
Stay locked in. This is a conversation you can't afford to miss. And that brings us to today's guest, someone who knows what it means to build from nothing, to pivot when the world closes in, and to use creativity as both a survival tool and a superpower. Welcome to Impactors Out Loud. I'm your host, Tracy B. Allen. Impactors Out Loud is where social impact meets strategy, spotlighting trailblazing entrepreneurs, their challenges, and the revolutionary innovations driving real change. Each week, we dive into powerful stories, strategies, and insight to inspire and equip those passionate about making an impact through business. Lara McKusky is a multidisciplinary creative force, writer, editor, graphic designer, and strategist who has turned resilience into a blueprint for success. As a single mom, a freelancer, and a neurodivergent entrepreneur, so am I, she's proof that business isn't about fitting into someone else's mold, but about crafting your own. She's here to talk about the problem solving, unconventional business strategies, and the power of owning your skills no matter where life takes you. Get ready. This is going to be a conversation full of insight, inspiration, and straight up practical wisdom. Laura, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Tracy. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
I think there was a lag because I couldn't hear you. Yeah. You're welcome. So, tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
yourself and what your cost story is. How did you become this superpower business owner who does all this freelancing and still raising your family?
My cause tale is definitely been complicated by some undiagnosed neurodivergence,
Hmm.
PTSD, and a few other mental health issues that
Hmm.
I sort of developed and fell into during the course of getting divorced from a man who had become very abusive. And I look back and think, wow, if I had the support then that I have now, it would have been such a different experience going through the court system, going through
Hmm.
custody. And I kind of wonder how that woman did it. I really, I look back and think, wow, I can't believe I came out of that alive.
Right.
It's a system that you don't know, and you're basically holding the hand of a total stranger who is your
Mhm.
attorney and trusting them to lead you through, right? As you're building up debt, paying, for an attorney to help you with
Mhm.
this. It's all
Mhm.
very stressful. So, in the course of that, despite having two bachelor's degrees and an associate's degree, I was struggling to find work after having been home for 7 years. And I was I am now still. I am in a rural area of Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in Maryland,
Mhm.
and my now ex husband had encouraged me to come up here. I now realize that was an isolation tactic. But around here, minimum wage is still 7.25 an hour.
Wow.
So anybody that paid $10 an hour or more, we're like, hey, we're paying more than minimum wage. And I was like, I can't live on this.
Right.
I could do minimum wage for 40 hours a week, or
Mhm.
I could get paid more than minimum wage, but it was always part time. And at that point in time, it was about 2011. remote jobs were not really a thing yet. And so I finally ended up having to go back into my home state of Maryland to get a decent paying job. And somehow my ex managed to finagle child support out of me, even though he made 4 times what I made. And I could not, I was giving him 65% of my paycheck. And I was living with my parents. And so I had to start freelancing, which I had done a little bit of as a stay-at-home mom. And I am a self-taught graphic designer. I went to college and took a couple. So I have 2 bachelor's degrees, plus I have another 40 credits towards a graphic design degree. So I had some training, but I had started old school as an artist and drawing logos by hand and doing my freelance work that way. And so now I'm doing it digitally with Illustrator, and I connected with some people that I knew in PA, and they were in direct sales, and I was creating colorful decorated calendars for them to hand out to their teams and their customers. I was creating all manner of print design. I started freebie websites for them. And I was even, I mean, that was new for me, doing the websites, but I needed to expand and I needed to be able to offer enough that they would pay me. And that was how I made ends meet. And I tell you, they were some long days. That the doctor's office where I was working full time was 7 a.m. And I am not a morning person. 7 a.m. to some days I got off at 4:30, and other days I didn't get off until 6. I would like eat dinner, go for a walk, and come home, and I would be designing.
Right. So 10 to 12-hour days on your regular job and then coming home. And I'm kind of happy you say that, because that's one of the things I think a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting off, especially if they have their full-time job, they're just like, I don't have time. I don't have time. If you want to do this, if you need to do this, you will find the time. There were times when I was doing 18 hours, sometimes 20 hours a day as an entrepreneur, because I needed to build my business. So you find time for the things that you want to find time for.
Right.
In your case, with paying 65% of your salary to your ex-husband for child support, you definitely needed to find the time to make extra money if you were going to live.
How could I possibly? I had made payment arrangements with my attorney. I'm paying the child support. I'm still, my car, thank God, was paid off, but I'm putting gas in it. I'm driving regularly an hour away to get my kids and spend the weekends with them. I'm giving my parents some money for like food and rent. Like I still had a ton of expenses, and it was really, really hard. I grew up in a middle-class household, and then my ex-husband made good money. I had never been quote unquote poor, and it was a struggle. When you're neurodivergent, handling money is also very hard, and doing things consistently is very hard. And I struggled. I just across the board, I was struggling. So finally I had to move back to York in order to secure custody of my children, because they absolutely refused to let them across state lines.
Oh, wow.
Nothing I said could convince them. They would not let me bring my kids across state lines. So I had to go back to this place where I had been abused, where my children were being neglected and not well taken care of. And I was scared, but I was determined. And a lot of people did not want me to move back up there, because I ended up living walking distance, like 2 miles from my ex, because that's what I could afford. I had to switch jobs, right? So now I'm back in this job environment that's not paying well. I was at a high school working in the library as a paraprofessional, and they capped my hours at 29 a week. So in order to still paying him child support, now I'm paying rent, and my car is breaking down, and all these things are happening. And my mother would say to me, my mother always told us that education was so important. My mother grew up one of 6 kids. She was not able to go to college. They could not afford it, and that always was very disappointing for her. And she really wanted us to have a good education, and she didn't care for the public schools in our area in Maryland. And so part of the reason why she worked was to pay our tuition.
Okay.
And there were 5 of us, and we went
Mhm.
to Catholic school, a little tiny local Catholic school.
Mhm.
But I tell you what, they were talking to us about college from about 5th grade on, and talking about study skills and all the things you need to do to succeed in college. And
Mhm.
my mom would say, no matter what happens to you, no one can take your education or your skills
Oh,
or your self-respect away from you. And
she's
I
right.
I have to say, with all of the trauma that I was undergoing, and make no bones about it, the court system re-traumatizes women and children. Okay. And I just felt so shrunken down. Like, I don't know if I can explain this, but there were days where I felt like the
Mhm.
only things I had were inside my skin. I had my thoughts, I had my skills,
Mhm.
literally everything had been taken from me. He fought me tooth and nail on what to take from the house, even things
Mhm.
that were clearly mine from childhood. He would try to claim. I had stuff in storage for a while living at my parents' house, and when I couldn't afford to pay the storage bill anymore, I had to sell what was left of my married life. And I met people at my storage unit and sold my life until it was
Wow.
empty. And I had nothing when I needed to move back to York. And when you have high anxiety and neurodivergence, your
Mhm.
environment is incredibly important to you, right? It needs to
Mhm.
be calm. You need to be able to settle yourself, anything, repetitive noises or colors that are too bright, a TV that's too loud. All of those things can really make it difficult to de-stress. And
Mhm.
here I'm in a home with next to nothing, most of it unfamiliar because it's hand-me-downs. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how do I calm myself down? I don't,
Right.
I'm living 24/7 in an unfamiliar environment. So it
Mhm.
was, it was really challenging to stay focused, to work,
Mhm.
to get done work and come home and then work more, and at that point I had 50-50. I went from growing up in a family of 7 to living in a household with a husband, many pets, 3 children, to living by myself for the first time in my life at 32 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I could not sleep at night. We were in a townhouse. I'd
Mhm.
never lived in like a group housing situation. So every
Mhm.
noise woke me up. It just made all of my PTSD and mental health issues worse. And it was a
Mm.
big struggle. And being hyper independent, which happens a lot after trauma,
Mhm.
I didn't want to tell anybody that anything was wrong. I was just like, no, I got this. I'm handling it. And I finally went to the doctors after I had a flashback and a meltdown in the middle of Target and left
Mhm.
my cart full of food and ran out.
Oh, wow.
And he said, what makes you think you have PTSD?
Mhm.
And I said, well, and I listed everything off. And I said, also, I work in a library and we had a PTSD book and I took the test. I have 27 out of 29 of the traits. And he goes, oh, that'll do it. So
And is this
within
PTSD from your marriage?
PTSD is from my marriage. My ex-husband was an addict and an alcoholic. He
Mm.
was supposedly in recovery for a number of years by the time I met him, and I trusted him. He had joined the
Mhm.
military. I thought he was rebuilding his life. He went back to college. I was so proud of him.
Mhm.
And as the marriage went on, his behavior just disintegrated and his treatment of me disintegrated. He'd be gone all hours of the night. We each had cell phones by then. He wouldn't answer his phone. I was constantly alone with our children. I was
And the court gave him
everything.
custody?
And the court basically said, in order to retain stability for the children, they
Leave
need
him
to stay in their schools.
with an abuser?
Here's the thing. I wasn't able to talk about his abuse. They
What?
told me, the judge said, the judge said he would not hear anything negative. This was not going to be a fight in the court. This was going to be clean and simple and easy. He
Clean and simple and easy for
had his own
whom?
domestic issues, and for him, clearly.
Oh, when I hear
And it
these
was like
stories,
watching two
sometimes
frat
I'm
boys
just
watching him have a
flabbergasted by.
conversation with my ex-husband. It was
Ye
miserable.
yeah. Oh, okay.
I was too, trust me. Because as a neurodivergent, we have an overdeveloped sense of justice a lot of times
Right.
and a high sense of
Right.
fairness. And here I'm going
Yeah.
into court thinking I will tell my truth and the truth will set us free, right? And my
Mhm.
attorney's going, "Oh, you can't say that. The court's going to look at you as a bitter woman. They're going to label you.
Oh,
You can't speak poorly of him. Everything needs to be on the up and up and respectful." And I'm like,
no.
"But that's
What?
not the truth." Yeah,
So what
that's not the truth.
so you filed
So,
a divorce under what grounds?
well, irreconcilable differences. I mean, we didn't have to have in Pennsylvania.
Mm,
It's a
got
default
you.
state,
Yeah,
so
got it.
that part didn't matter. But
Mhm.
and I will say the divorce master
Mhm.
saw right through him and his attorney,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
came down on them in the courtroom, and I was
Mhm.
very relieved. But when it came to the custody case, we had this strange judge. He was having his own domestic issues, and
Mm.
they moved him from the criminal bench
Mhm.
because he was having domestic issues. They were like, "You know what we're going to do? Let's put you on the
Put you in
domestic
family
bench."
court?
Does that make any sense at all? Oh my Lord.
Oh
So
my
he
goodness.
literally, I'm in the witness stand. He
Mhm.
has his feet up on the desk and is just jiggling his chair around while I'm crying on the stand.
What?
When we get
Oh
his
my
opinion,
goodness. Mhm.
he says in his opinion, "I find mom to be financially motivated to get her children, and therefore I'm going to award custody to the father."
Hmm.
I thought, did you must not have listened to anything I said on the stand. Where did financially motivated even come from? And
He didn't care. He was using his own life to judge
I
your
think that's
case.
exactly what
Mhm.
happened. And I'm being told that there is no recourse. Judges are protected.
Mhm.
You cannot, my worry is as we continue through the system, that's in writing. That's his opinion
Right.
in writing, and it's part of our
Yeah.
case now.
Mhm.
How is that going to influence things going forward?
Right.
So finally, I went through several attorneys because I kept trying to explain to them how my ex-husband was, and none of them believed me.
Mm.
So I finally get a female judge recommended by a friend who is an attorney in Baltimore that I went to school with,
Mhm.
and she's working in York City proper. And I said, "You don't understand. He's a really tricky person to deal with. He's very manipulative. I believe he is narcissistic." I said, "He will pull out all the stops. He will say one thing and then contradict himself immediately. He will lie about even stupid little stuff." And she said, "Look, I work in the city. Okay. I've worked with people trying to get kids from gangbangers, and I've worked with some of the worst human beings you have met. I can handle him."
Mhm.
And I thought, "You're not getting it." So one day I was trying to just get permission for something stupid and simple for my ex-husband for one of my
Mhm.
days, and he was just all over the place. And he wouldn't stay on topic. He would try to derail the conversation by accusing me of things that weren't true to try to get me upset so I'd forget about what I had asked for. So I just
Mhm.
started forwarding her every email he sent me that day. And there were a lot of
Mhm.
them. And at the end of the day, I get an email back that says, "Holy cow, he's crazy." And I was like, Do you understand now?" And she was like, "Oh my Lord." And I said, "Because you left this gap that I told you to fill in the custody stipulation, this is why he's
Mhm.
pulling this.
Right.
You absolutely do that in the future." And he was like, got it now. Okay.
Mhm.
Particular language, like different verb usage. got it.
Yeah.
So that really changed things for me, finally,
Mhm.
because she was listening, she understood what he was doing, and she wasn't trying to just apply a standard format to our case, which wasn't
Right.
cookie cutter. It wasn't going to work. So finally, we get 50-50, which our judge got into personal criminal trouble and was booted from the bench. That was the only way I would have ever gotten a new judge, right?
Mhm.
And he's literally just voted in, brand new judge. Nobody has a feel for him. We don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
We go up for like our 4th time at trial, trying to figure out custody.
Mhm.
And he looks at the paperwork, and I'm living in York, and he says to my ex-husband, yeah, so the law is that we strive for 50-50 in all cases.
Right.
And from this schedule your ex-wife has given me, she's got more than 50-50 right now.
Mhm.
I'm not your attorney, and I can't tell you legally what to do, but I'm going to warn you that she has the right to 50-50. And if you go through with trial, that's what's going to happen.
Mhm.
My ex insisted on going to court. He lost. I got
Mhm.
50-50. And I got to stop paying child support.
Mhm.
And still, I was supposed to have phone calls when they were at his house, and he would deny me.
Mhm.
Then he would let me have phone calls, but he would record them, or he would have them on speakerphone. I mean, it was just constant. So finally, he gets a DUI, which he tries to hide.
Mhm.
I find out, and he, after me, had a live-in girlfriend that he had twins with. So he now has
Mm.
5 children. She has left him.
Mhm.
She came to me and said, I'm very concerned for your children. And I'm like, I'm well aware. And the two of us, I call her my sister ex, the two of us took him back to court for custody
Mhm.
because he had 50-50 of all the kids.
Oh,
And we
okay.
went in, and the conciliator was like, you have a DUI, my friend. That's on the list of statutes you cannot violate and still have custody.
Oh, okay.
He blew a gasket. He shows
Mhm.
up without an attorney and
Mhm.
blows a gasket at the conciliator. Don't
Mhm.
recommend it. My sister and ex and I got full custody. I want to say that was 2019,
Mhm.
and I've had full custody since then.
Awesome. Awesome.
And the entire time, I think at one point I was working 5 jobs,
Mhm.
trying to pay all these bills. My rent was going up every
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
My kids all needed to go into therapy.
I would think so.
I was in therapy, so I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm paying all these co-pays. We're like on medical assistance, like all these, we're just doing the best we can, right? I'm on
Mhm.
food stamps. I'm doing whatever I can. I've had to
Mhm.
replace my car, which turned out to be a used Lemon that I've had for 10 years. It's
Mhm.
constantly in the shop. It just felt like, I said to one of my friends just the other day, she said, I don't understand how you're still like accomplishing
Standing.
things,
Yeah.
like you're doing things.
Yeah.
And I said, I used to get so upset when yet another problem landed on my plate, right? Because I
Mhm.
would just have so many, and I would feel so stressed and so
Yeah.
incapable of, I felt like I wasn't capable of handling some of them.
Mhm.
And I'm now living in Pennsylvania again. I'm an hour from my family. There's no support around because he's purposefully isolated me. And I
Mhm.
don't know what to do. I've never encountered these problems before. And
Mhm.
I've never been a single parent before. And and I said, I finally got to the point where I thought, you know what? Clearly, as a single parent, lots of problems is going to be the state of my life.
Right.
And I have to adapt a problem solving mindset
Mhm.
and understand that the path that I have chosen is hurdles as far as the eye can see. And I just need to
Mhm.
accept that. Because as soon as I think things are going well, something happens.
Mhm.
So I've got to reconfigure my definition of happiness. I have to reconfigure my goals and what is acceptable for me.
Right.
What do I really need to be doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And as I talk to women everywhere, at the grocery store, getting my hair done, talking to parents in the bus line, so many women had the same experiences as me,
Mm-hmm.
going through the court system and struggling with these abusive men who didn't really want the kids, but they were fighting for custody just to be jerks. And women were experiencing the same exact struggles that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I now refer to it as an urban legend, but the story that circulates in our culture is women taking men to the cleaners when they get
Mm-hmm.
divorced, right?
Right.
Women they're getting most of my paycheck with child support.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not true. That is not what's happening from anyone that I have spoken to about divorce. And I thought this needs to be talked about. Women need more help. Women, I joined a bunch of Facebook support groups, and the number
Mm-hmm.
of women that would say, my ex-husband is saying this. And 6 of us would chime in and say, it's so weird. My ex would say the same thing almost verbatim, like they have a
So
playbook.
are we saying that all of these men are covert narcissist? Covert narcissist. I can't even get it out. Covert narcissist.
I think that narcissism is a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you have the propensity to abuse, there is a certain level of narcissism involved. That is,
I mean, if they're all playing from the same playbook, they're all suffering from the same issue. That's why I kind of
exactly
asked.
right.
And it
That's
sounds a lot.
literally,
We can't diagnose them,
no,
but it
look,
sounds
not
a
a
lot
doctor,
like
not a
covert
doctor, but
narcissism.
look, I'll tell you what, I am a researcher by nature.
Mm-hmm.
I go on deep dives, and I was determined to figure out what could be his problem because I needed advice on how to deal with him. And going into these groups, I discovered I had a lot of knowledge that they were too caught up in what was happening to be able to take the time to figure out what their ex's problem was and the best way to respond.
Right.
And as it turns out, of course, there are plenty of psychiatrists and doctors who have written about divorcing a narcissist, you know, when your children are parented by a narcissist, you know, and you have to read these books because they have good tips. There's whole systems already in place, like Gray Rock, which means to go absolutely no contact. And so they have a playbook, and those of us that are abused by narcissists manage to find each other over the internet, and we're recommending books, and the same titles are coming up every time. And, you know, that's how those groups were really how I survived, but it also gave me the seed of an idea. And my mom kept saying, like, I just don't understand. There's like no help. There's no help. What is going on? And, she said, why don't you think about starting a nonprofit? Well, that just felt overwhelming. You know, my kids are little. Now I have full custody. I'm still trying to no, I'm not doing that. But that idea has never left me. And as I was just diagnosed ADHD 2 years ago. And as I do my typical research deep dive on new topics, I am finding that among groups of neurodivergence, they are all struggling with communication, social interaction. We are struggling to get through the job process and discussing whether or not to reveal our disability, because that's what it's classified as, to potential new employers, and whether or not that'll impact our ability to get a job. There's a work burnout cycle that we all go through regularly, and we're losing jobs or we're quitting jobs because we just can't take being in the neurotypical environment 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. We are hard, enthusiastic, creative workers at work. And often what happens is, and both my parents would say this, the better a worker you are, the more they're going to expect you to do.
Yep.
And that has been true in
Always.
every job. That's
Yep.
why I have such a
Yep.
broad skill set,
Mhm.
because they would come to me and go, well, you're tech savvy. Can you build a website? And I'd be like, I guess I can figure it out, and
Yeah,
I
because my
just
friends
start
ask me
studying as I
that all the
go.
time, like, "What haven't you done?" And I was like,
Yes.
"Well, I am a quick learner, and I
Mm-hmm.
can become an expert at almost anything that I set my
Mm-hmm.
mind to in about 48 to 72 hours.
Yep.
I
Yep.
will
Especially if I'm
not
interested
sleep."
in it.
Yeah, I say I will not sleep. I will just be laser focused, and 72 hours later, I know as much as someone who has a master's degree. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
it's
I become an
our
expert.
hyper focus or our hyper
Mhm.
fixation of the moment, right? It's
Yep.
also called special interests. We have special
Mhm.
interests,
Mhm.
and the things that I feel like make me a good employee,
Mhm.
I'm reading up, and I actually stumbled upon a study. Somebody did a
Mhm.
study on how neurodivergents function in the workplace,
Mhm.
and they said even if nobody in the workplace knows that this employee is neurodivergent, neurotypicals seem to be able to sense it and
Mhm.
will socially shun them in the work environment.
Mhm.
So we're left at work with no friends or no
Mhm.
one to talk to. We don't have the work spouse or the work bestie or anyone to lean
Yeah.
on, right?
I don't think I
And
had that issue. I think I was the one shunning people more than anything else because I
really,
just couldn't take all of the noise that came along with people. All of the things that came along with people, I was just like, "Oh my god, this is too much." Like, you
no, I
because I was
totally
a
get
teacher,
that.
right? So, I was just like, I have, what, 30 kids in each class? That's
Hmm.
100 and something personalities a day, and then the
Yep.
staff? Oh, no.
Well, my degree is
But
in
I did have
education.
a few people who are a lot like myself, probably
Yes.
neurodivergent themselves, that I
Yes.
did connect with, and those are the people, just a core group, like
Yep.
3 or 4 people that you can really connect with, and the rest of everybody's, "Hey," and just keep going, you know?
Absolutely. That is true on many, many levels. I experienced the same thing. I had
Mhm,
worked with kids since I was like 12. I'd worked with other people's kids. I
mhm,
get an education degree. I've
mhm,
been with large groups of children, but I
mhm,
get into student teaching and I thought, holy wow. I Everyone comments on my energy and I put
mhm,
180% into everything I do.
mhm.
And I knew as I was finishing up student teaching, I thought, I am going to burn out in about 3 years.
And that's what happened after about 15 years for me. I was just like, I was
Wow,
burnt
that's
out.
really good though.
Burnt
I
out to the
really
point that
appreciate it.
I was so sick, the doctors couldn't
Yes.
even figure out what was wrong with me.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
they could not figure it took them an entire year, and it was just a litany of different diagnosis, one after the other, and I was just
Yes.
like, and even my kids said to me when I left, teaching, "You're such a nicer person now. You're such a better
Wow.
mom now." You know, and I
And
was just like, I realized that I talked at a normal level when I left teaching.
I
I wasn't always up here. Like, because you have to be heard. And I didn't realize I was just
absolutely.
basically just shouting all the time. So, yeah, so it completely
Yep.
changed my life. And even going into entrepreneurship too, um, you have to learn how to self-reflect and um self-regulate as a neurodivergent person, because you will do the same thing
Mm.
that you would do for somebody on the job. You give yourself, you start piling things on top of yourself and start doing so much that you're burning your own self
You say
out.
yes to everything.
Yes. So no is, I tell people my middle name is no. That's my middle name, because before I say yes
Nice.
to something, I say no. I will tell
Good
you
for
no, and then I
you.
will
That's a
think
great
about it and maybe
attitude
come
to
back
have.
and say yes, but no is always going to be my go-to answer in most cases.
Wow. That
Yeah.
I might have to adopt that actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, because not only do we as neurodivergents, we're like, oh, shiny. Like we like the new stuff,
Yeah.
right? So anytime a new project is presented, we're like, yes. But
Mhm.
then 2 hours later, we're like, should have said no. That's gonna take
Mhm.
way more time than I thought. And it's
Yeah.
super hard to go back to somebody and say, I know I was really excited and I know I said yes,
Yeah.
but now I've rethought it and I don't think that's going to work.
Mhm.
So yes, I think
Yeah.
learning that no is a full sentence, as they say,
Mhm.
is such a good idea. And really,
It is.
freelancing is absolutely what taught me
Mhm.
how to have boundaries. It
Yeah.
taught me how to price myself so that I was getting the most, get done a project, which I was charging a flat rate for, and realized, holy
Mhm.
mackerel, I just got paid $10 an hour
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I spent so many hours perfecting that and working and pouring my heart into it for that person.
Mhm.
And I mean, you learn by mistakes and you
Yeah,
start
definitely.
self-correcting.
Mhm.
And I think that's another thing that kind of spurred me on to
Mhm.
continue freelancing over the years. Or I would finally get a full-time job. I'd be so relieved, right? I have this one job. I'm not working 5 jobs anymore. And
Mhm.
then I got laid off at COVID and I had to work. I was on
Mhm.
unemployment, but it wasn't as much as what I got paid. So once again, it was like, all right, let's dip back into the skills. I
Right.
gotta refresh. And
Mhm.
so I always leaned on those skills and brought them back to the surface.
Yeah.
And I was in a long-term relationship after my husband, and we moved in together in May of 2023. And it was like moving in with a stranger. It wasn't the man that I knew at all.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was flabbergasted. And
Mhm.
he became, he was a micromanager. He encouraged me to be financially dependent on him.
Mhm.
He criticized literally everything I did, every
Oh,
single thing.
wow.
And I'd look around going, who are who are you talking about? He didn't like anything I cooked. He didn't like how I was raising my children. He
Mhm.
thought my dog was not well behaved enough. I mean, just every day it was something.
Wow.
And of course, my body slips right back into, oh, this is familiar, trauma response. And I just start
Mhm.
shutting down. And
Mhm.
I'm literally thinking, just make yourself as small as possible and maybe he won't
Mhm.
criticize you today. And my anxiety was through the roof every day. We both worked from
Mhm.
home on opposite ends of the house. And if I
Mhm.
heard his footsteps coming, I would just feel my heart, because I didn't know what he was going to say to me. I didn't know if he was in a foul mood. I didn't know, it was just constant. And then when I started talking to my kids about it, I have 2 boys and a girl, and
Mhm.
none of them wanted to be there. None of
Wow.
them liked him, and they were all
Mhm.
unhappy. And I was like, well, I didn't want to be a quitter, and I wanted to try to work this out, and I wanted to
Mhm.
go to therapy, and I
Mhm.
wanted to not have a second failed relationship. And I thought, kids are unhappy. That trumps everything.
Yeah,
That trumps
it
everything.
does.
And I thought,
Yeah.
why are you over analyzing this and overthinking this and worrying
Mhm.
about this? Um, you forgot for a little while that the kids are the North Star.
Mhm.
And I was talking to my therapist and I said, I think it's time to leave. And she was
Mhm.
like, oh, thank God. I was waiting for you to come to that conclusion yourself. I was trying to remain neutral.
Uh-huh.
And she's very practical.
Mhm.
Sorry.
That's fine.
And she's very practical and was immediately like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
sending you links for this, and
Mhm.
this, and just jumped into crisis mode, and
Mhm.
I saved up some money. I borrowed money. I loaned money. I did everything I had to. I needed to find a rental in the same school district we were in for my son. And we didn't give him any notice. He came back from walking with the dog one morning,
Mhm.
and there was a constable and my entire family in a moving truck. And he just looked
Okay.
totally bewildered. And I said,
Mhm.
the kids and I are leaving.
Mhm.
And he was like, what? And I said, we can't do this anymore with you. And he had
Mhm.
the nerve to say, I thought things were getting better.
Oh.
And I was
They
like,
probably were getting better for him. Maybe they were.
yeah. I'm like, I
But
don't
not for
know
everybody
what's going
else.
on, but in my world, it was not better. And
Right.
We
Yeah.
left and it took us 14 hours, but we packed and moved in the same day. We got into a townhouse and the rent is 2.5 times greater than the rent I was paying before I moved in with him. So I went from having a really nice income in a really tiny townhouse, moved into a home with him, which was extremely expensive, moved into an almost new townhouse to rent, and now I'm back to paycheck again. I was like, well, I had 1 year of reprieve. Now I'm back to this. This is familiar. But at the same time, in the last 6 months, I've had shingles. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
Shingles. And I was like, no. This rash that's super annoying and itchy on the back of my neck. And she's like, yeah, it's in your scalp. It's all, and I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
So that took 3 weeks to clear up. A week later, I'm diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I had unspecified fatigue on my chart since 2018, and no doctor had bothered to investigate it or fix it. And it was getting so much worse. And I was barely sleeping. I was working. I was anxious through the roof every day. And God bless them, my medical team really pulled together. I told each of them what was going on in my life. And they were working hard to adjust my meds and just physically get me through planning and getting out of that house. And once I got out in October of 2024, so this is all very recent, I was then diagnosed with diverticulosis, and I kept thinking, I have some PTO I'm saving for Christmas. I just need to get to Christmas. I've been telling myself this since August. I just need to get to Christmas. And I had 2 weeks off at Christmas. And to say that I crashed and burned, I slept most of the 2 weeks. I could barely function. I was barely functioning. I had no focus. I would sleep chunks of the day and then not be able to sleep at night. My restless leg came back so badly that I couldn't sleep. And it took us 3 tries to get the medicine right for that. It's been really, really, really hard the last 3 months. And I thought, it doesn't matter that I feel like I am a lower person on the totem pole in our culture right now. It doesn't matter that I feel like there's no help for me. I'm talking to other women, and there are women that are somehow in worse spots than I am.
Right. So you said you started a nonprofit association and nonprofit. Tell me about that.
I started, I ended up in talking to other neurodivergence in groups, as I am currently in a toxic work environment, and I'm trying to find another job. And I'm having all the same problems they're having. And yet I still somehow have helpful resources for them. I'm going, oh, well, didn't you check here? And didn't you try this? And they're going, what's that? And I thought, okay, so I have some extra skills and knowledge that people don't have. I can still help people.
Right.
And
right.
I start doling out advice left and right in my neurodivergent groups.
Okay.
And I had people start asking me, are you a coach? Do you have a website? Do you have a course? Can you teach me how to do this? And I thought, maybe the universe is poking at me. Maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. So I floated the idea in my group. How would you feel about, say, a group that started on Facebook, but maybe ultimately has a website that has free resources? And people were like, oh my God, I would totally join that. I totally need that. Yes, please. And so I started the Pathfinders Collective. It is a Facebook page right now. And I'm hoping, because I'm insane, apparently, I am also in grad school right now.
Okay.
And I have spring break next week. So my plan is to get the Facebook group going so we can have real conversations. And I want to see how much it will cost me to get a website up for this group. And everybody I talked to that I floated the idea past, I'm like, well, I started this thing and I'm calling it the Pathfinders Collective. And I explain what I'm doing. I said, you know, I'm finding that people who are not white, cishet men are struggling. They're struggling to start and maintain their businesses. They're excited and they're creative, but they don't have a business background. They don't know how to market. They're falling victim to scams. And it includes women. It includes people on LGBTQ, like anybody that doesn't feel accepted. And they're trying to run these businesses. And some of them are so ingenious and so amazing. And they just need some help. And so my resources for the Pathfinders Collective will include helping people find resources to find kind of unique jobs and niches and remote work, which suits them better. And then if you've decided the entrepreneur route is the way you would rather go, you've just had it with trying to work in a regular work environment. I also do that. And I've been doing, I added creative business consulting to my freelance work about 3 or 4 years ago. And so, for example, as I'm working on things and I'm going, I think this is a better fit for me. It's like stuff just starts, suddenly it's there. There's all this synchronicity happening, you know, as you narrow down on the things that work for you. So right now I'm working with a local author who's a woman and she's an entrepreneur and she wants to write a book. And I write all kinds of stuff. And I have been, you know, published in little magazines and things. And I'm like, I can totally do that. She said, will you help me edit my book? I said, heck yeah. And she said, I need a website, an author website. Can you do that? Yes, I can. You know, just so happy. And she's so understanding. And she is also neurodivergent. And I, having been in a rough place and needing help, I offer payment plans. You know, I will create plans where I'm like, okay, here's our priority. This is going to cost you $750. Let's set up a payment plan. We are now going to set up your business in chunks or levels or phases. And not only is that more manageable for a neurodivergent or for someone who's trying to work full time and get set up on the side, but it helps from an executive dysfunction area too, because you're giving them the breakdown, right? Because they're thinking, I know there's 3,000 things I have to do and I'm trying to do them all at once. So this helps them break that down. I feel like my education degree has come into play. I do a lot of teaching.
Most definitely. Yeah.
I do so much teaching with my clients, teaching them about marketing and branding and how to use different social media platforms and all of that. You know, one of the concerns with the author I'm working with, she said, I'd love to have a community. I'd love to have an online community. And she said, but I'm worried that I'm going to get overwhelmed in like a chat room and I won't be able to, you know, and I said, we can set boundaries and guidelines. She was like, really? I didn't know I could do that. You know, and I'm like, you can do whatever you want. You and so it's just such a joy to help people break out of these mental ruts and these preconceived ideas that they had about how they had to run their business and helping people find their own paths and understanding that, you know what, you can't listen to everybody else. Make your own path. Make it work. And here are 6 businesses whose newsletters I subscribe to of women and LGBTQ and creatives and woo-woo types. And they're all just doing things I've never seen before. And they're making it. They're making it work. And those are the people that I want to work with. And so I'm offering the Pathfinders Collective on one side, but then I also have my freelance work on the other side. Which I anticipate needing even if I get a different full-time job, honestly. Everything's so expensive. So next year I will have 2 kids in college. So yeah, is a lot. So right now I am working on that. And then I've been a blogger for a long time. Writing is a great release for me. And I started on Substack, which is a 50-50 hit whether people have even heard of that yet.
Yeah.
But I started a Substack and I thought, I took a master class with Roxane Gay, who I love. She's one of my favorite people to read and follow. And she said, don't let people box you in. She said, I've written a comic book. I've written fiction. I've written nonfiction.
You spoke a word. That is the one thing that grinds my gears when people try to put me in a box. Oh, but you're a nonprofit consultant. I was like, yeah, I am. I'm also a social enterprise consultant. I was also an educator. I also am very good at AI, own a whole AI company. I can do things. I don't have to do one thing for the rest of my life. Okay.
Yes.
Before I left teaching,
That's
before
right.
I got into teaching, I changed my job every 2 years. Why? Because I was bored. Okay. I had gone in, I did it, I conquered it, became really good at it. Now it's time to move on. I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
And the only reason I stayed
Absolutely.
on my teaching job beyond year number 2 and year number 3 is because my mom said, you're an adult, ma'am. You need to stay in one place. You have a kid you need to take care of.
But can I just
what she
say,
said,
that
borrow
is so...
roots, like bore my roots into the ground and stay there. And every year, I mean, I made the most of it mentally. I did mental gymnastics to make sure that, like, because if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be in it 150%, right? So I made sure that I mentally armed myself to make sure that I went to work and I did a good job and that I wasn't allowing my need to escape affect my job.
Didn't that feel like you were swimming against the current every day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's how I felt too. And I thought, this sucks and I don't want to do it anymore.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just funny that you're saying that because a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, I can do the things. I'm not fronting. Like, I can really do these things.
As neurodivergent, our interests are varied.
Yes. I don't just want to do one thing.
Seekers, and that typically comes with something new, whether you're shopping or doing a new project or meeting a new person.
I do art.
Right.
I
We need
draw
that
paintings when I want to be really creative.
Novelty. Yes.
I've written books. I have a whole publishing company. I mean, I just wrote my first children's book.
Good for you.
You can do things. You can do it. Like we tell people, well, not everyone. I mean, I always want to get back to that. Not everyone can do everything. You have to make sure that whatever you're doing it responsibly, that you actually know what you're doing. You know what I mean? But in my case, and I think in your case, if we're passionate about something, we learn it to an expert level. And then we go and do it. We're not doing things and then saying, yeah, I can do this. And we don't know what we're doing. But yeah.
Yeah. That was so freeing because I was like, well, I have these fiction ideas. But then I kind of also, I'm really getting into this creative nonfiction thing. And, I have stories to tell that I think might help other people. And I just want to do more. I want to do more. I don't want to do the same thing for the rest of my life. And my sons are 20 and 18. And my poor 18-year-old is a senior. And he's like, Mom, I can't pick a major. I said, honey, I don't care.
It's okay.
It's okay. I said,
I appreciate when I say that, but it's okay.
You're going to change your job
for
15
me,
times until you retire.
I wish for me that when I was that age, that somebody told me it was okay. I felt like such a failure because I went into college as pre-med and then I got pregnant with my son. And I was just like, well, that's out the door. I need to hurry up and get out of college and, do something that I can take care of my son now. And I changed my because nothing really stuck to me because that's the only thing I ever wanted to do was to become a doctor. So I have a lot of credits. I have about 60 credits in science, about 60 credits in psychology. I went to nursing school, dropped out with one class to finish nursing school, one class, and I dropped out of nursing school because nothing was just sticking. And then I went to the counselor and I was like, hey, I was about 25 at the time, 26 at this point, right? And I'm working, because I got to take care of my child, but I'm still going to school. And so I have like 30, 40, 50 credits, and I haven't graduated
Wow.
from college yet. And I'm just like, okay,
Wow.
what's going on? Tell me, what degree can I get with all these credits that I have in
Right.
all these different areas? And she was like, well, you have a lot of credits in English and education, because I was taking them as electives, right?
Oh, okay.
I was always good at writing,
Hmm.
was always my thing. So I'm really good at it. So I took a lot of English classes, and education, I think they were just convenient for taking,
Hmm.
fill in
Maybe
the
fit into
gap.
your schedule at the time.
Yeah, you know. And so she was like, well, you could get a degree in either English or education. And that's what I
Nice.
did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wrapping
So
it
I have
up.
a bachelor's degree in English with a minor in psychology and
Oh,
science.
wow.
So yeah.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah. But and got into the nonprofit world through grant writing, starting off
Okay.
with that, right? And then for the last 20 something years, I've been doing nonprofit consulting as a side gig, and then became my full-time thing when I left education about 12 years ago. But
Wow.
yeah.
Quite the
So
journey.
I
But I
know.
think
I mean, there's
too,
so much more in there, but this interview is not
no,
about
I
me.
understand. I
But
mean,
yeah,
it's
I
hard to truncate my
just to
story.
say that
It's insane.
totally, yeah, I
And
totally get it. Yeah.
um, and I think as women,
Mhm.
um, I think we're expected to handle so much more. I think
Mhm.
it's assumed that we're
Yeah.
gonna handle all the things, that
Mhm.
we're gonna keep everybody organized, and we're gonna keep everybody on time, and we're gonna keep everybody focused, and we're gonna keep everybody fed.
Mhm.
And I had read this somewhere once. I don't remember. It's been many years ago, but I said this to my mom one day, and she was like, that makes so much sense. I said, men tend to be real sticklers about not wanting to change. There are
Right.
so many men that are like, but it's fine the way it is.
Mhm.
And I said, women are built for change. I
Yeah.
said, we go through puberty. Then we have a period every single month. We have the menstrual
Mhm.
system going on. Then we go through perimenopause, then
Mhm.
menopause. I said our bodies change and
Mhm.
go through cycles constantly. You get
Right.
pregnant, your body changes. Then it has to adjust for 2 years after you give birth. There's just
Mhm.
constant. We are very acclimated and made
Mhm.
for constant change.
Yeah.
And I think that just we are mentally suited for
Mhm.
change.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there are so many women that I know that are
Mhm.
parents, that are single parents, that are married parents, who do such creative things to assist their children. They
Mhm.
do creative things to assist their households. They do have creative ideas and creative systems for working and managing
Mhm.
the home. I think there's just a lot of natural inclination for us to do a lot of that. Not
Yeah.
everybody. There are
Mhm.
definitely women that I know that are overwhelmed by managing a household and trying to
Yeah.
work and all those things. And those women are the ones that just I feel such connection to,
Mhm.
as um, it doesn't have to be that way. Yes, it's probably going to still be hard,
Mhm.
but we can make some things easier for you, and we can make some things fit your personality
Mhm.
and not and help you get rid of that helpless or overwhelmed or depressed feeling or stuck
Right.
feeling.
Mhm.
And there's so many women that want to be home with their kids, and how can I bring
Mhm.
money into the house? And
Absolutely.
I'm able to, they go, oh, well, I make these little things with my hands. And I'm like, those are the cutest things I've ever seen. Why aren't you selling those on
Yeah.
Etsy? And they're like, yeah, I mean, I crank out like 12 a week. I'm going,
Mhm.
that's a thing. That could be a thing, and they
Exactly.
just don't have that
Exactly.
mindset, and
Yeah.
they're just, oh, really? I could do that. And I'm like, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just like helping people. I feel like there's been enough trauma and negativity in my life.
Mhm.
I'm not the person that's going to go around bitterly complaining about where I've ended up. Okay.
Mhm.
Everybody has hard times. Everybody has challenges.
Mhm.
And what we need to work on is problem solving and assisting each other.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. So
Okay.
I've got a Substack that I ended up calling A Wild Howl, because
Mhm.
I feel like the last 6 months of my life I've just been screaming into the void.
Mhm.
And I decided I'm not going to be boxed in. I'm going to talk about whatever I want on that Substack. I'm going to talk about ADHD. I'm going to talk about PTSD. I'm going to talk about the court system. I'm going to talk about culture. I'm going to talk about my favorite TV shows. I'm going to tell you what my favorite books are. I'm going to do all the things.
Yeah. I love it.
Because I think
Yes.
people want to be entertained, for one thing. And I think people want and need an example of how to just be
Of a holistic
yourself and put
person.
it out in
Yep.
the world and stop letting people tell you who you are. Stop that.
Yeah.
You know who you are. Be that person.
Yep.
Be that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to draw that out of people and help them, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to put good in the world because there's been enough crap. I want to put some good into the world and some fun and some good news and some education. I want to put it out there. So you can go read my Substack, which I have decided is going to be free, period.
Okay.
Everybody's on Substack to make money at this point, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You read 2 paragraphs and you think this could be really helpful information. And then it says 4 subscribers only. And I'm like, look,
okay.
I cannot afford to pay 30 people $5 a month so that I can read content that I think would be good for me. And knowing that neurodivergents struggle, that people outside the norm struggle, I am not going to put up a paywall on information that could be helpful or entertaining or whatever for anybody.
Right.
I have a buy me a coffee link at the bottom of the post. If you feel so moved, give me $2. That's great. But I'm not going to paywall my stuff.
Okay.
That's how I feel. I'm getting kind of frustrated with that aspect of Substack. So my information will be out there. I offer lots of things. I love talking to people. And I love brainstorming with people. And I don't know if you're ready to move on to other things. I know I've taken up way more of your time than you probably intended.
Well, we're gonna wrap it up. So, what are 3 things that you would want to leave the audience with, if about living in their authentic self?
I think you need to be patient when you start things. There's really no such thing as viral or overnight success. That is a myth. Just be patient. And the second thing is be consistent. Super hard for neurodivergence, by the way. I know that, but figure it out. Figure out a way for you to be consistent, because when you're patient and when you're consistent, people will show up. And follow your heart, which is such a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. Find your passion, follow your heart. Don't let other people talk you out of it. Don't let people tell you it has to be practical. It will work if you work it. Follow your heart. That's what you have to do.
And what makes you an impactor?
I would say I am an impactor because I feel really strongly about things, and I'm persistent, and because I think that in critically thinking about things that are bothering me or that are problems for me, I talk to my circle and my family, and I seem to be able to make people think and make people want to know more. And even just one person at a time is helpful. It's a ripple effect. You got to start somewhere.
Right.
And when I wrote a blog before, I managed to get up to 800-900 people a month on my blog, which as a working mom was a big deal for me. And I thought I did it once and I can do it again. And I think that all of my skills kind of have built up to a point where I can be more effective in helping people.
Okay. All right. Well, Laura, thank you so much for being our guest here on Impactors Out Loud today. Tell the audience, you said you have a Substack. Where else can they find you?
So
And
on
repeat the Substack name too.
Sure. So on
Mhm.
Facebook, it is facebook.com/the Pathfinders Collective.
Okay.
My Substack is awildhowl.substack.com. And then I have a personal website, which is undergoing some renovation right now, but there's still information there. And it's Lara, Lara McKusky, McKusky.com. LaraMcKusky.com. Those are the best places to find me.
All right. Well, thank you again for being our guest today on
No,
Impactors
thank you for
Out Loud.
having me. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, guys. Until next time.